From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Hey folks, good morning. James Azar here. I hope you had a great weekend and you're ready to kick off this week. We're 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving, but we're still in Veteran November. Hashtag Veteran November. Make sure you check out all of our awesome veterans yesterday. Joe Coleman was on a great episode with an amazing guy who's done so much for our nation. Before we get started though, folks, make sure you subscribe to our podcast right now. And by doing so, you help support our content. We're very close here on YouTube to get to monetization. So please subscribe, give us about 10 minutes of your viewing time, and we do appreciate that. You can get our entire Practitioner Brief at CyberHubPodcast.com. I do appreciate your support there as well. Our traffic has been going up significantly, and I'm grateful for that. Now let's get into today's Practitioner Brief. A few things to talk about. There's been nothing major. Like if you guys are first-time listeners, I don't report on breaches and all of that because unless there's lessons to be taken, if someone's under a ransomware attack, I care about how they got in and not really about the ransomware attack itself because it doesn't help me. I don't get happy when someone else has an issue in cyber. In fact, I don't even want to put them under the lights of and on radar of just being like, oh man, and add to the pressure that they're already going through. So I don't report on that. I report on stuff that really does matter for me as a CISO. 3 things that I'm going to talk about today. 2 are important. 1 is a really, really big story, and we'll see how it pans out. So cybercrime is moving to the cloud as attackers accelerate attacks. The Lazarus malware group is striking South Korean supply chains, and a shakeup in CISA in post-election. So we'll get right into that as well. Let's start with the Lazarus malware strikes down a South Korean supply chain. We all know the Lazarus group. They are a huge APT threat actor. They've been allegedly responsible for multiple major breaches in the US and globally. But they've not only attacked, but recently they've expanded their attack surface to not only the theft of sensitive data from corporations, but also in order to compromise cryptocurrency organizations because the North Korean government needs money. And now they're doing this because in order to target cryptocurrency organizations, users are required to download Wizvera Veraport, a program used to manage software downloads that are necessary to visit particular domains. These updates may include browser plugins, standalone security software, or identity verification tools. And Wizvera Veraport digitally signs and cryptographically verifies downloads. Well, here's what's going on. Lazarus has been targeting the supply chain among South Korean companies who use this Wizvera Veraport in order to illegally obtain code signing certificates and then use that to launch their attack. So this is, again, significant. A lot of our trust, and we talk about zero trust and other, is based on some level of I know where this is coming from, and that's why I give it access. So what happens when we don't trust anymore? It's a big deal because they're taking advantage of the trust certificate in order to launch these attacks, at which point where they download, they use all the same file names, icons, resources, again, not the same, but similar. They visit a malicious website. The unwittingly downloads the compromised software. Then they launch a dropper via the Wizvera Veraport, which extracts the downloader, configures the files, and then it allows for remote access Trojans, which allow for exfiltration and the whole chain of attack. So something very important here is this could be a POC. A proof of concept by Lazarus for something larger scale that could impact our organizations. And we live in a global world, and I think many of you who listen may deal with a South Korean company within your supply chain at one point or another. So something to keep an eye on, look down your supply chain. Over the next few months, I'm going to be talking heavily about CMMC and how we can use it in the private sector. I think the DoD finally got something done right here when it comes to cyber regulation and cyber standard. It uses the NIST. It uses a lot of different things. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a lot of talks about it on CISA Talk. So if you haven't subscribed there, make sure to do so now. Cybercrime is moving to the cloud to accelerate attacks amid Glut. So cyber criminals like us are going through a digital transformation, folks, and they are moving to the cloud in increased pace. This is according to a report by Trend Micro. Malicious actors are offering cloud-based tools to buyers for analyzing and extracting the data that they need in order to conduct and further their malicious activities. This is in a post that launched this morning. The move to the cloud for cyber criminals has the same benefits, one of which is time. An attack now has been gone down to from weeks to days or even hours from the moment they get access to an organization's cloud infrastructure. Researchers say with the introduction of cloud-based services and technologies, they are equipped to steal and take advantage of all of that. Now, the challenge they're running into, folks, as cyber criminals, is they've got a ton of data. In fact, terabytes worth of data. We looked into this briefly this morning. We're able to see a ton of data based on the cache levels. In recent years, the theft of user credentials has been on the rise. They're collecting a ton of amounts of credentials and are able to associate email addresses, domain names, and so much more with PII information. And they cross-reference this. They go down the cloud route. They're able to expedite an attack. They're able to really do a lot of damage. So keep your head. A lot of these services, by the way, for cyber criminals aren't expensive. They're in $300 to $1,000. So anyone can afford that pretty much in this game. Criminals only need to search for the data they need in order to find an opportunity to commit because of the trove of data. So you're starting to see that they're having a problem. They're coming up with new ways to launch more attacks at us, especially from data they have acquired through our cloud infrastructure. And with our digital transformation, something we need to take a look at and consider as we adopt. We'll move to our final story of the day, a shakeup in CISA post the presidential elections. 2 senior CISA officials have been forced to resign, and Director Chris Krebs is expected to be fired as of right now. No news have come down, although there is pressure from President Trump on DHS Secretary Chad Wolf, Acting Secretary Chad Wolf, to do so. Valerie Boyd, who's Assistant Secretary for International Affairs, and Brian Ware, Assistant Director for CISA, have both resigned last week and are essentially no longer with the organization. Because of the CISA's support of a fair election process, the White House is really expected to call for Krebs' resignation. So we've seen a lot of stuff done well under Director Krebs with CISA. We'll see where this goes, folks. I mean, I sure hope Director Krebs stays in his role. I think he's done very, very well. This election cycle has had its challenges. Those are left up to the courts, and any shakeup at this time from a leadership perspective might be far-fetched unless there's clear evidence. Now, at the end of the day, when you serve in the executive branch and you serve in DoD, you serve at the pleasure of the president. And so with that being said, President Trump is still president based on what's happening until January 19th. And so it is his right to ask for people's resignations as well. That's it for us here today, folks. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow. Until then, stay tuned. Veteran November, another great episode dropping later today, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you tune in for that one. Until then, this is James Azar signing off, wishing you all a great rest of the day and a very, very great week. And stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.